filmed by a citizen who was at the Valero. On the right, upper right-hand corner, is the video from the Valero security camera. Again, something that I believe you all should be familiar with. In the bottom left-hand corner, this is the video that from the body cam of Officer Moreno. And then in the bottom right-hand corner is the video from Officer Palmer. So right now we are watching all four, and they are moving in time simultaneously. They are contemporaneous with each other, and the audio is synced up so that as things are happening, what you're hearing is what is actually transpiring in the videos that you're seeing. So it's a lot to look at because you've got four different things to look at. But let's start with Officer Palmer's, and we'll play it all the way through one time. Then we'll maybe play it again, and I'll stop it and try to show you what it is that I think is relevant for you to consider.
Warning about vulgar.
Thank you. There are some less than savory comments on there. I don't know whether any of you are broadcasting live, but if that's a concern, you might want to put a 3-second delay on it so you can beep out anything that you find objectionable.
It's over with. No. Listen, I'm going to take this one off, okay?
That's right there, like we try to see. You know about that? Look at that. I didn't know that was in there, man. That's why I told you not to reach under the seat. No, I didn't, man. I ain't know that was in there. Right there, that point in my face, they was wearing my. I'll beat your ass soon. Try it. I'll beat your ass. I'll beat your ass. Try it. You pussy. Hey, you a pussy. Try it. Hey, you a pussy. Hey, try it. Back up. You a pussy. You get the phone like that. Get all my stuff, man. Stop. Give all my stuff. Hey. Listen. Hey, get
take in 4 different screens, all the audio, and one thing I neglected to do was maybe orient you to what's going on here. So I wanted to correct that before we play it again. In the upper right-hand screen, you see there is a black Mustang convertible behind the unmarked police Charger. Then right behind that is the marked Rock Hill Ford Explorer. Those are the front car, the Mustang, is the vehicle of Ricky Price. That was pulled in a traffic stop. And by the time we've reached in this video, he has been pulled from the car. A small amount of marijuana, or a quantity of marijuana, about this much, has been located in the car, and he's been placed under arrest for that and brought back over next to the cruiser where he was standing at the beginning of this video with the other officers. The individual in the bottom right screen, the top right screen over here, who was in green, started over again and pause it if you don't mind. The gentleman in green right here is Travis Price. He is Ricky Price's brother. And he came to the scene, I think, aware that his brother was being arrested, and law enforcement officers at the scene told him that he could take his brother's property. So he's standing there, and if you watch just that video over the next plane, you'd see there's 2 or 3 occasions, 3 at least, in which they hand him things. As they're taking jewelry off of Ricky, they're giving it to Travis. Now, Moreno, who is over here in this video and searching the car, you can see him kind of hanging out the driver's seat. I don't think he is aware that they've told that to Ricky, and that's part of the problem. There was no communication, but he's unaware of that. So he is the one who walks over and confronts Travis. So So that's what you're seeing. And then this gentleman here is Ricky Price. He's the one that was driving the Mustang. So are there any other questions before I play it again? So just as to the video and what's taking place. Anybody?
Whose video or voice are we hearing?
This is the body cam of Officer Palmer, who's the canine officer. He's the one, he's the dog handler. The dog had earlier run around the vehicle and alerted to the presence of narcotics in the vehicle.
So this is Palmer's voice.
This is Palmer's voice and the officers in proximity to Palmer.
Right.
Yeah, because it's surprising, even though they're about 8 or 10, 12 feet away, you can't hear things from Moreno that he's saying, you can't hear them on Palmer's. Just that distance and the ambient noise and other things going around have made it difficult to hear. So there are things you will hear on Palmer's that you don't hear on Moreno's, and there are things you'll hear on Moreno's that you don't hear on Palmer's, because they're just, the distance is such that so it's important to have both, because it gives you audio perspectives that you don't otherwise have.
Who is Travis handing the jewelry to again?
No, Travis is receiving the jewelry from the officers and his brother. The jewelry and property is coming off of Ricky Price, his brother, and the officers, and I believe maybe even Mr. Ricky Price himself, were handing the items to his brother Travis. Okay, let's roll through it one more time.
It's over with, man. No. Listen, I'm gonna take this one off, okay?
That's right there, my two guys. You know about that? You been dead. I didn't know that was in there, man. That's why I told you not to reach under your seat. That was in there. No, I didn't, man. I ain't know that was in there. They had a point in my face, nigga. I'll beat your ass soon. Try. I'll beat your ass. I'll beat your ass. Chill out. You pussy. Hey. You a pussy. Chill out. Hey. You a pussy. Hey. Chill out. Back up. You a pussy. You get this pussy like that. Get off the stuff, man. Stop. Get off the stuff. Hey. Yeah, listen. Hey, get handcuff him. That's my
Does anybody need to see it a third time? Do we need to run through the Palmer
Can I just ask another clarifying question?
about the video?
Yes. So the video in the bottom left-hand corner, I just want to clarify which officer is that?
This is Officer Moreno.
That's Officer Moreno?
Yes.
Okay. So when you were saying that, sort of alluding to part of the issue was on communication, which I know you'll get into, he did not hear the officer say, hey, we're going to hand
He did not. He was over, I believe, at the Mustang searching that. And then you might have heard the other officers yelling his name in the video. Moreno, Moreno, Moreno. Because they saw him with Travis. They were trying to get his attention. But he was focused and not hearing. We need to go through that again? I'll play it as many times as you need till you feel like you understand it.
Question. SEMA Hire Fox 46. Why was the dog let out of the vehicle?
That would be a question for Chief Watts. I don't want to get into substantive procedural, just about the video, because we're trying to show you the stuff now. And then if we need to come back and to answer a question, we can do that. But we just want to show you the video so you can get an overview of what took place right now.
Is there a reason the video was stopped where it was
Like right there?
Yes, because this is really the relevant portion for the purposes of our analysis. This is when after this, there's nothing left. They were both subdued and taken into custody. There was no further.
Relevant according to your definition. Relevance is the entire uncut
Yes,
raw video
yes,
being
absolutely.
given to the lawyers and family
Yeah, I
and to
believe-
the media.
Well, I believe it's being released or has been released already.
No, it will be released today after this.
The entire.
The entire.
All the video will be released.
This is just for the purposes of us explaining what's going on with the charges, the SLED review, the policy and procedure issues from Rock Hill. This is just for that. But the whole thing will be available for not just media, but anybody who wants to download. I believe they've made a link to the videos available so that anybody who wants to see it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does anybody need to see this again before we move on to Moreno's body cam? No? Very good. Let's do Officer Moreno's body. Again, it's the same video, the same videos that you're looking at, same thing, except now what you're hearing is what's going on around Officer Moreno.
Pistol two. Pistol two. I didn't know that was in there. You didn't know? I know I told you not. Hey, my man. He give me a stop. Hey, you don't touch me. He give me a stop. Hey, man. You don't need to come and try to stop. He got a gun. You ain't even know. You don't. I'm telling you. You ain't even know. He got that. Don't be up. Put your foot. You ain't pushing up on me. You ain't pushing up on me. You ain't pushing up on me. I ain't gonna say it, man. I'm not trying to pushing up on me, boy. You ain't pushing up on me. You hear me? Fight. Fight with me. Fight. Fight. Look at me. Fight. Fight. It's just me and you, man. It's just me and you. Come on, Jay. You move. That dog bites. You ain't even move. You move. You don't even move. Man, you get bigger than me. Quit crying. Yeah, okay, too, baby.
Okay, do we need to play that again?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Pistol two. Pistol two. I didn't know that was in there. You didn't know? I know I told you not. Hey, my man. He give me a stop. Hey, you don't touch me. He give me a stop. Hey, man. You don't need to come and try to stop. He got a gun. You ain't even know. You don't. I'm telling you. You ain't even know. He got that. Don't be up. Put your foot. You ain't pushing up on me. You ain't pushing up on me. You ain't pushing up on me. I ain't gonna say it, man. I'm not dead. I'm not trying to pushing up on me, boy. You ain't pushing up on me. You hear me? Fight. Fight with me. Fight. Fight. Look at me. Fight. Fight. It's just me and you, man. It's just me and you. Come on, Jay. You move. That dog fight. You see that? You move. You move. No reason, dog. Hey, man, you get bigger than me. Quit crying. Yeah, okay, too, man. Everybody, yeah, come on. Hey, let's go. You gonna get stuff. Hey, you serve y'all no crowd? Oh, man, what's it?
Any questions, or we need to play it again? Any questions about the video? Understanding what orienting. That was Officer Moreno.
Can I ask why are there videos just from these two officers and not from the other officers on the scene?
These were the videos that depicted what took place. There were other officers and other cars there with dash cams, for example. They were pointing in the wrong way. You couldn't see what was taking place.
Is there other video of this from other officers on the scene?
Nothing that is relevant. I believe he's released and is releasing
All the releases.
everything that shows what took place. Like there is another store video, for example, but it points in a completely different direction, doesn't show anything. So those aren't being released because they're not relevant. But these are the ones that depict what took place and the people that were there. Because not all the officers that were present on the scene were wearing body cams. Some of the officers, there were 3 officers from Homeland Security that were there, HSI officers that were not wearing body cams. So there's no footage from them for that reason.
Do you know what Officer Moreno was saying as he approaches Travis? It's just kind of hard to hear. I know you guys have it's all scripted or anything like that.
It sounds, I mean, you'll have to hear it yourself. You'll get a copy of it after this, but, I mean, you'll have to listen to it. I don't want to try to interpret it and get into that, but, you know, I mean, it sounds like he was trying to push him back and saying something like, don't be in the middle of a traffic stop. I heard that part.
Is it clear from the video who approached who first? Because based on the audio, it doesn't seem as though Travis approached the officer first. Is that made clear from this video or any other video?
Yeah, when you watch, you can watch simultaneously, and we can play it a third time. I have no problem with that. You can watch the 2 different perspectives. Up here, the store camera, as he's getting out, you can see that that's a distant shot, and then down here, you're actually seeing what he's seeing, because that's, I think it's mounted lower. I think his was on his belly. He had a vest on. I think it was mounted lower. As you can see here, this is him walking around the Charger and approaching them. These are the officers. There's Ricky Price, and then in green behind him is Travis Price. So now you can see Travis is just getting jewelry and stuff from the officers who told him he could be there. So he did not approach Moreno. Moreno saw him and not knowing what he was doing there, thought he was too close to the other officers, thought it was a safety issue.
At one point, Moreno says, you're not going to shove up on me. That's, I guess, what I'm referring to. Is there evidence that Travis Price attempted to shove Officer Moreno?
You see what we see.
Well, why don't
We'll talk about that in a
Can
second.
you rewind and point out that moment that you're referring to?
You can hear him say, you're not going to push up on me. Right before that, we'll back it up again, and you can see it. We can.
Okay, yeah.
But to be fair, someone could say, you're not going to push up on me, but we're at a distance. It could just be said.
Well, back it up to that part and then just play it. Because again, I don't want to get into the business of interpreting it. You see it, I see it, and everybody sees what's in front of them, and then makes their own decisions about what it is. And we'll talk about that in a second. But go ahead.
He getting me a stop. You don't have to touch me. He getting me a stop. You don't need to come and try to stop. He got a gun on him, and I didn't hit him up. You know, you ain't doing that. He got that goddamn thing. Don't touch your boy. You ain't pushing up on me. You ain't pushing up on me. You ain't pushing up on me.
Does that answer? Did you see that better that time?
Question: who determines whether the dash cam footage is relevant or irrelevant?
We did for the purposes of this, but they'll release whatever you want to see if you want to make your own determination on that. I think it's all eligible to be released under the Freedom of Information Act. I believe that the city of Rock Hill and Rock Hill Police Department want to be as transparent as possible. So they'll show you whatever. If there's something else in there, you can make that determination. But for the purposes of this press conference and trying to explain to you what took place, this is what we believe is the relevant video material.
Solicitor Wright, I have a question if I may. In a statement released by the police department on the evening of June 23rd, they said, and I quote, officers were moving Ricky's person and Travis was told to move back. Travis then used his body to bump the officers backward as he continued trying to get near his brother to reach for the belongings while yelling belligerently. Travis was forced back until he was under arrest for interfering and physically contacting officers. Travis shoved officers, refusing to comply with orders to place his hand behind his back. Did we just see Travis shove officers or not?
We're going to get to that, Mr. Dice. I want to make sure everybody's seen this to their satisfaction, and then we'll talk about what we think it means.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about the video? Just, you said earlier that officers then said, hey, Moreno, let's stop, or, giving him his story.
Yes.
We said that's okay. Where in the video is that? And I missed it. Is it on top, or is the officers trying to speak to Moreno, or?
It's on the Palmer video, because you can't hear it on Moreno's. We can play the Palmer one again, but the Palmer video is closer to where is this one here. So they're that far away from him, and just that distance is enough that you can't hear that. You can hear it faintly on Moreno's, but you hear it clearly on this one. At least two officers are calling, Moreno, Moreno, because they see him with Travis, and they're trying to get his attention, but he doesn't respond to their calls. But that's clear on this one. So when you get your copies of it, you can go back and listen to it. You'll have copies of these to look at as much as you'd like. But we're trying to show the videos. Is there anything else that you need to see on the videos? Do we need to play it again?
Can you back it up a little bit more, or maybe go back to Palmer's? Because at one point it looked like somebody was on the ground, not Travis or Ricky. It was like an officer. Can we go back to that point?
Tee up Officer Palmer's, please. Officer Palmer's audio. How far in?
No.
How far in is it, do you think?
Just as everything starts with Travis.
As he approaches him?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see that?
One more second. Keep going. Right there.
Which?
This
With the
person
green
in the
vest
gray
on.
body armor. Who
This right here?
is that?
That's Officer Moreno.
Is that why it's black on the other side?
I'm sorry. What's
On Moreno's camera, it's white
Yes,
because his
yeah,
camera is directly
because
hit.
his camera is now on top of Travis.
Gotcha.
So this is his camera. You can't see anything because it's literally pressed up against Travis. So it's the screen, the lens screen.
Yeah, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Anything else before we leave the videos? Everybody clear on what he showed? Okay. Thank you very much. Good delay. Okay, so here to speak to the question, now that we've shown you the videos, the next thing we want to do is discuss with you what the results from the various different players, because each of us has a different role. Chisa Putman, the city solicitor, is the solicitor and responsible for the prosecution of the charges against Travis, and she will speak to her assessment of the case against Travis. Then she will introduce Chief Watts, who can talk about his assessment of this from a policy and procedure standpoint, because they are not investigating their involvement. That's done by SLED. So the overall review of the incident and use of force and all that sort of thing is reviewed by SLED, but he can talk about policy, procedure, and what the City of Rock Hill Police Department, what their response to this incident is. So next up, City Solicitor Putnam.
Thank you, Solicitor Brown.
Can you please spell your first and last name and your title as well?
Yes, ma'am. Chisa Putman, C-H-I-S-A. Last name P-U-T-M-A-N. And I'm the senior solicitor with the City of Rock Hill. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, I am Chisa Putman, the senior solicitor with the City of Rock Hill. And I'm here to specifically address the charge against Mr. Travis Price. On June 23rd, an incident took place. an incident in which we have all seen and many have drawn their own conclusions. As a result of this incident, Mr. Travis Price was charged with hindering police. Since the incident occurred, there have been several statements, press conferences, and demands. Unfortunately, the law is not immediate. It takes time for SLED to thoroughly review and interview. It takes time for the chief of police to thoroughly review and interview. It takes time for the county solicitor to thoroughly review. And it takes time for the city solicitor to thoroughly review. So we thank the community. We thank you for your patience and for demonstrating your concern in an overall manner that was respectful to our city and those involved. We wanted to get it right, and we wanted to make sure that the law is upheld and that justice is served. As a result of his multiple reviews, Chief Watts recognized that there were in fact some issues with the matter and requested that we review the video together. This was my first time reviewing the video, and I too recognized the concerns that the chief had. Based on our review, we agreed that Mr. Travis Price was charged in error. Therefore, the city solicitor's office has dismissed the charge of hindering police as it relates to Mr. Travis Price, and it will be expunged from his record. Now, this decision in no way impacts any charge or charges as it relates to Mr. Ricky Price. Again, I'd like to thank you, our community, for allowing us the time to properly review and resolve this matter as it relates to Mr. Price. And Mr. Price, I do apologize. We are dismissing the charge. We have dismissed the charge. So now I'm going to turn it over to Chief Chris Watts, and Chief Watts will discuss the City of Rock Hill Police Department's procedures and policies.
Before you do that, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Can we wait, I'm sorry, Andrew, can we wait till the very end and ask her so that everybody hears everything that's going to be said before we get into it? Otherwise it'll...
Solicitor question, not
No, I understand, but we'll all be here till the end and available for questions. Otherwise, it could become disjointed. We want to
Sir,
kind
can you please spell your first and last name for us as well? Thank you.
CHRISWATTS. Thank you for coming to the press conference today. I am Chief Chris Watts of the Rock Hill Police Department. I'm here to address some concerns that have arisen during the investigation into the arrest of Ricky and Travis Price. First, I would like to thank the State Law Enforcement Division and the York County Solicitor Kevin Brackett for completing a thorough investigation in a timely manner. I also want to thank City Solicitor Chisa Putnam for working with me on Travis Price's charge. I also appreciate the community leaders who met with me over the last 2 weeks and the community at large that had afforded us a time to investigate this case completely. From the onset of this incident, the police department has been committed to transparency and justice for all individuals involved. The police department's internal review reveals the following. It has been found that Investigator Moreno's interaction with Travis Price violated the standards set forth in our policies by not attempting to de-escalate the situation. In fact, he escalated the situation. Investigator Moreno's actions were not in accordance to the police department's values or expectations. Based on the totality of Investigator Moreno's actions, his employment has been terminated. It has been found that the actions of Sergeant Watson did not violate the standards set forth in our policies when he struck Ricky Price. At the time Sergeant Watson struck Ricky, Ricky was actually and actively fighting officers. Sergeant Watson delivered 2 strikes to the common peroneal nerve and 1 strike to Ricky's face, which ended the fight. The other issue found during the investigation was that Officer Palmer let go of Ricky during the fight to get his canine from his vehicle. In this particular situation, the canine was not the best option. However, the use of a canine in a use of force situation is not violation of policy. And I want to iterate that the canine did not bite Ricky or Travis, and a taser was never used during the incident. Our community trusts its police department to hold itself in a high standard while protecting and serving the citizens of Rock Hill. We value this trust and the support of Rock Hill community and ask that you remember this incident is not a reflection on the many officers that live up to the high standards as they serve the community. Thank you, and I'll address this now. We will be sending a link as soon as this is over to the videos for you guys to have. I'll turn it back over to Solicitor Brackett.
Thank you, Chief. So you all have had an opportunity to see the video that I have seen. I've seen that video 100 times from every angle. I've focused on one angle at a time. I've looked through it very carefully, and I looked through it with an eye towards evaluating the conduct of the officers to see if the conduct of any specific officer rises to the level of a crime. Did anybody on the police side violate the law is ultimately what my task is. And again, I thank Agent Slazewski, who has gathered all this information for me, and the patience of the public and the community in allowing us the time to get to these witnesses. Believe it or not, it's harder than you think. The last witness was interviewed yesterday, I believe, by Agent Slazewski, one of the HSI officers who had gone out of town on vacation and couldn't be located. She came back and he was able to interview her. She was the last person that was spoken to. Now, that was the last witness that he spoke to. One of the witnesses that he didn't speak to, because he wanted time and he wanted to be able to see the videos, was Officer Moreno. And so he was really the last person that was spoken to in regards to this at my request. And I'll discuss that in a second. First, I want to comment on the arrest of, or the subduing, because he had already been arrested, of Ricky Price. I reviewed that, and if you want to see the video, when you go look at it, we could show you again, and it might be worthwhile seeing, but you can go back and look at it. After, let's show this. After the fight had started, forward it to just after Officer Soto arrives on the scene in the top right-hand corner. Where you go back some, please. This is Officer Soto, but I need him back when he's closer to Travis. Because he first ran to Travis. Now you stop. Stop. Okay, go ahead and play. Yeah, now stop. Now watch Officer Soto goes over, because they're having a very difficult time controlling Ricky Price. He goes over, and there'll be an officer right here who temporarily, just for a second, blocks Officer Soto's head. But go ahead and watch. Play. You see a hand come through here, and up on top, what you can see is Officer Soto's head whipping over. He got punched in the face as soon as he arrived. Ricky hit him in the face and spun his head around. You can see his hair pop up. So that is, again going to be available to you. This was a violent struggle, and I will not pretend that any resisting arrest is ever pretty. They're not. But in this particular instance, Ricky Price started assaulting the police officers. Whether it was good policy for them to ever take his handcuffs off after they took him off in the first place was probably not a good idea, but they had to help him facilitate turning his jewelry over to his brother, and with his hands free, he was able to mount a very significant struggle that started on the side of the car and dragged 3 officers to the back of the car before they could subdue him. So my conclusion from the reviewing of that video is that no officer in that matter should be charged with regards to subduing Ricky Price. Now, As regards the arrest of Travis Price by Officer Moreno, I have also looked at the video from that arrest, and I concur with the decision of the city solicitor to dismiss the charge of hindering police. I see no evidence, I saw no evidence that Travis Price did anything. He was where the police, the other officers had told him that he had a right to be. Officer Moreno came to him, pushed him back, and pushed him up against the tank, and then ultimately took him down to the ground. He had done nothing wrong. He did not have any cause to do that. And by laying hands on him without legal cause, he broke the law. And so I've directed SLED to seek a warrant from a magistrate charging him with third-degree assault and battery.
Ooh, yes.
So, and that will be served today.
Can you repeat that charge again one more time, please?
Assault and battery, third degree.
Third degree assault and battery.
Third
and that
degree.
would be against Officer
Moreno,
What
yes.
is Moreno's first name, please?
Officer Moreno's first name is Jonathan. Jonathan. Jonathan, yes. As I mentioned a minute ago, SLED worked hard to locate all the witnesses, even trying to track down, going to the Valero for some of the people that were standing around in the parking lot, the citizens, to see if the clerks there could identify who these people were so that we could ask everybody who might have any information. He spoke to everybody that we could locate. He got statements from anybody who might have been present and able to give us information and insight into what took place there. But the one person we didn't talk to and couldn't talk to was Officer Moreno himself. I don't want to make this decision, especially a decision to charge him, without giving him the opportunity to talk to me. So I reached out to him yesterday, and I asked if he would be willing to come up here. He has, as a member of the PBA, a lawyer that was assigned to him. I reached out to his lawyer, Mr. Michael Lobshire, who came up here with him this morning, and he spoke to me. And I asked him, I explained to him what the consequences of what had taken place were. I showed him the video. We went through it together. I told him, I'm not here to interrogate you. This isn't my opportunity to get a statement. I just want to know, as the solicitor, the guy who's got to charge you, is there something I'm missing? Is there something you want to tell me before I make this decision? It was apparent to me that he was already in distress over what he'd done. He knew he'd made a mistake. He was aware of that, and I could tell he was remorseful and he felt bad. Now, we're up here talking to you about the law and policy and procedure and what the legal ramifications and what this means and what that means. But there's another side to this too. There's a human issue here. What took place created a lot of turbulence in the city of Rock Hill, and it upset a lot of people, and rightly so, with respect to Mr. Travis Price. I understand why people were upset. I do. We don't just need a legal resolution to this, I told him. We need a human resolution too. And I explained to him, when you make a mistake, what is the right thing to do? And he did not need any convincing. I think he genuinely feels bad about what happened. And so I asked him, I said, we're going to meet today on a moment of inspiration. I said, we're going to meet today and we're going to have the press here. And I don't know whether you have anything you want to say about all this, because the community is who's been offended, not just the community, but your colleagues in the Rock Hill Police Department who have to go out every single day to protect this community. The community needs to know they can trust law enforcement, and law enforcement needs to know they have the support of the community, because you can't have a society without police. You have to have both the trust of the community and law enforcement to keep the community safe. I think he wants to make a statement, and I said, well, if you want to, I will be more than happy to make the podium available to you. So he is in the back over here, and I am going to give him a minute to get up here. He is not going to answer questions. He's going to leave from here with Agent Slazewski and go over to the detention center to be booked. After he's done talking, the three of us up here, he will leave, and the three of us up here will be available to answer any questions you have.
My name is Jonathan Moreno. I'm a former police investigator with the Violent Crimes Unit at the Rock Hill Police Department. After 10 years in the city of Rock Hill, I finally felt like I was at home. Although I have done many great things in my career as a police officer and in the community, many of you have seen my recent actions and have learned about the incident between myself and Travis Price. Mr. Price, I wish we met on better terms under different circumstances, and after reviewing every camera angle, I know now that you were allowed to be in the area. I apologize for the misunderstanding. My mistakes and meeting you in such a negative way, I just wish my emotions didn't get the best of me. My choice of words do not define my character. I sincerely apologize for what you have experienced. What occurred is out of my character. As a man, a father, and a former police officer, being held accountable is the only rule, and I am no exception. I'm here to be held accountable for my actions. I hope the community will accept my apology. I hope my brothers and sisters in law enforcement will accept my apology. Travis Price, I hope you accept my apology. I'm sorry. I am here not only to apologize, but understand that I did make a mistake. I am here to own it. And I am here to make it right.
Right. I think that is about all the information we know to bring to bear. I'm sure you have many questions, so we can open the floor to that now. Andrew? Yes.
The chief, you said several times today that the authorities needed time to review this. Nobody took, it appears from the video and the decision to charge Travis Price that day, no one took any time to determine whether that charge was appropriate or not. Can you address why Travis Price was arrested at the scene, and with all those police witnesses and police officers there, why there wasn't more conversation about whether it was appropriate to arrest him at that time rather than here we are 12 days later?
I wasn't there when the decision was made to arrest him. I don't know. That was, I think, Officer Moreno's decision. I'm not.
I'll just speak that was Officer Moreno's decision. As you could tell, there was some in the video. There were some officers trying to get his attention through that. But as we look at it, it was not the proper charge. Travis was too close to the scene. That was not appropriate or police practice. When you have someone like that, you need everybody else further back. He was unaware that he was being handed the jewelry. He was somewhere else at the time. So that's why he
didn't ask my question very well then. There were several police officers there who witnessed what happened or were part of what happened. Travis Price was handcuffed, but he was not arrested or charged until he was taken to the police station or whatever happened. Was there not any discussion amongst the police there that cooler heads should have prevailed and Travis Price never should have been charged with that crime in the first place?
As I said, they were trying to get his attention. That was a very volatile situation overall. It was a very dangerous situation. He had been unhandcuffed, he had a loose handcuff, and then he started resisting. It's hard and all that commotion. And again, that's how the end result. So that's the best way I can answer that question.
Chief, you mentioned that you're reviewing policy. What sort of policy changes will come of this situation, if any?
Well, this was a one-time incident. We have not had this before. So we take this as in any other situation. We analyze it, and then we go back to the officers, and we have lessons learned, as we'll do with this.
Can you
Chief, I want to
talk
ask
a
you about
little
the
bit
arrest
about
of Ricky Price. When it comes to Ricky Price being there on the ground, I know Sergeant Watson had punched him several times in the thigh, then punched him in the face, breaking his nose. I wanted to ask you how an officer punching him in the face and breaking his nose is not a violation of policy.
When you're fighting with an individual, he had a loose handcuff. He was a dangerous individual. That during that time, the officers have different avenues. It is not against policy to strike someone. That's part of use of force. He made that decision in a split second, and that was the decision.
Chief, that particular strike wasn't against policy, punching him work, and you talked about the disabled.
There was nobody intended to break his nose. It was a fight. He made a decision to try to get that fight to a resolution for the safety of all. That's how it ended, and that's a decision he made. Police officers in violent encounters within policy can strike other individuals. That's just policy.
Chief, was Moreno given a severance package?
No.
Chief Watts, can you talk a little bit about the police report that was initially put out and then now seeing this video here where we're at now? How do we get to bridge this huge abyss where you have something that's said where, we're talking about Travis being belligerent and yelling or different types of things being said in the report that's not being, seen in this video? That was one of the things that we talked about almost immediately, but we still haven't really heard about why that police report was put out, if there has been an update.
I'm not sure exactly which police report. However, the charges, as we've made absolutely clear, was not.
The initial press release. When you guys put out the press release after.
The officers write the report initially. We review all the reports. And again, making it clear, the actions of Investigator Moreno were inappropriate. He should have not been charged. However, approaching Travis, he was too close, but he didn't take the time to communicate with the other officers. Now, Travis didn't immediately comply and back up. So, again, there was some resistance in backing up and getting further from the scene, but Travis was, I'm sure, confused because there's a group of officers that were there interacting with him, and then Officer Moreno. That's why we came to the conclusion we did.
Chief, can you talk about the community? Can you please talk about the video that was taken by the community member? Any of you, how did this help you come to the conclusions that you have announced today? Can someone talk about that a little bit? Did it help at all?
Obviously, any time, and we want the community to come out. If they see something that is improper, we're always asking for people to come forward. There's people that complain, and then we take every complaint seriously, as we did this one, so we can improve as a police department.
Can you respond to that question?
Yeah, I will respond to that question as well. I never complained about having too much evidence, so I appreciate it. As a matter of fact, the citizen video is the one that shows Officer Soto's head as he's absorbing the blow to his face. So you could see something of it on the body cam video, but not nearly as well as you could on the Facebook. So that was helpful in that regard. But I mean, I never ever have said I wish I had less evidence. I mean, obviously, the more evidence I have, the better my decisions are going to be.
At what point did you realize that there was a discrepancy between the initial press release that went out and when you determined that that may not have been what actually happened? And then how did that process move forward to getting other people involved to review?
Well, it's just part of the regular process. Anytime we have an incident, we gather all the facts, ask questions, and come to a conclusion. And in this case, we came to the right conclusion.
Did you personally see it and have a problem with what you saw?
Yeah, that's why we're here. The actions of Investigator Moreno was inappropriate. That's why we're here, and that's why we've taken the actions against him as we did.
Chief, I guess my
also punching?
The officers did not assault Ricky Price. Ricky Price assaulted the officers and resisted arrest.
You talked a little bit about lessons learned. How could communication between Travis Price and Officer Moreno have been improved? How could communication between the officers have been improved? And as much as someone said, Moreno, why did no one try to, I guess, de-escalate the situation?
Because Ricky at the time was fighting with officers. There was a lot going on, as I said earlier. The first part of your question is, Investigator Moreno didn't take the time, didn't slow down. He perceived a threat to the other officers. That's a valid threat. The problem is when he contacted and made contact and had the interaction with Travis, he never slowed down to ask why, to de-escalate the situation.
Chief, is there a policy in place that allows other officers to hold their counterparts accountable and dismiss them on scene if they are in violation?
Yes, we do have a policy to intervene. Correct.
Chief, can you talk a little bit about when Officer Moreno was fired, terminated? No.
That's a personnel matter. I can't speak of that.
Can you also talk about, I know you kind of mentioned SOP being that a dog can be used in a situation like this.
I said that was not the appropriate time to use a dog in that particular situation. I highlighted, though, a police canine can be used by policy in a use of force situation. As we review this case, that was not the appropriate time.
Can you elaborate on why that is? Can you elaborate on why that would not have been the appropriate time to remove the canine from the car?
As I said in my statement earlier, Palmer was there holding on to Ricky when he started resisting, and he left to get the canine. That's why it's not appropriate.
Was the canine trained to bite people, or is it a trained
It is a
dog?
patrol dog, which it is trained.
Chief, you mentioned lessons learned from this whole situation regarding policy and procedure. Could you just elaborate on those lessons and just be specific about what those are in this situation?
Well, we go back and learn about we always have to de-escalate. We always have to manage our emotions, no matter what the situation is. That's expected by all officers. Again, we have encounters all the time with citizens and criminals, and we do not have an issue like that. This was an issue. I'm glad it was brought to our attention, and we have managed it and handled it appropriately. But this is a lesson learned for all the other officers. Hey, this is not expected. You cannot get emotional and make bad decisions because they have consequences.
Are there any questions for me or City Solicitor Putman before we go?
I have one. Can you just talk a little bit about when you guys saw, I feel like you've addressed this, but I want to be very, very clear. When did you guys see the body cam footage? And was it before or after the charges for Travis Price?
After.
And how long between?
For me, far after. When this
between-
occurred, I was out of town on vacation, so I did not see this until much later. And most of the time, at the time of an event like this, typically what happens, they charge and then go write all their reports. Those are reviewed the next day, and then you start digging into the body cameras. And my understanding is once those are starting to be reviewed, that's when the chief and those guys said, wait a minute, this isn't adding up. Let's call SLED in and let's have a
So why does it take that long of a process to be able to see the cameras and see that something's not right, and then still not drop the charges against Travis?
There's a lot going on, like he said, with when you look at this, we're watching it on a screen in an air-conditioned room. I have the luxury of stopping and pausing and going back and forth. The whole incident from the start to finish was 2 minutes. The actual incident from the time Moreno arrives to the time they're all scrapping on the ground, Moreno with Travis, the other officers with Ricky, that was probably less than 20 seconds. So it happens very quickly. And the other officers don't see what's taking place over there. They realized it was spinning out of control, and I think you can hear, I can only deduce, like everybody else who's watching this video. I don't know what was going on in their heads, but I'm supposing those other officers were going, Moreno, trying to get his attention, like, hey, he's okay, we told him he could be here. And it unfolded from there. And then they are talking to Moreno. What happened? And he's saying, he pushed up on me, he pushed back, I was trying to get him out, and he didn't. And then they're in the middle of the fight, so they're not watching Moreno. they take his word for it.
Is there a federal investigation underway right now, or any other investigations? Is there a federal investigation underway, or any other?
I'm not aware of any federal investigations. There were federal officers that were involved, so I don't know what their policies and procedures. That would be a Homeland Security question.
The third-degree assault battery, is it a high court misdemeanor, or is it a city court?
It is a magistrate level, yes.
Level,
Yeah.
30-day or less.
That's right.
Conviction.
That's correct.
If there is a conviction. So it's,
Yes.
it's a misdemeanor charge.
Yes.
Third-degree assault battery.
Yep.
Does that preclude Officer Marino, if he is convicted, from being a police officer here or anywhere else?
I don't know what the policies and procedures are for who gets to be a police officer and who doesn't in one state or the next.
How you guys came to the conclusion of that specific charge?
That is what was appropriate for what he did. I mean, he laid hands on him and he took him to the ground, but in order to charge second degree or first degree, you have to have more serious injuries, weapons involved, that sort of thing. In the absence of that, if this had happened in a bar between two citizens, that would be a third degree assault.
Can I ask about like the treatment of the police footage as public record? Because I know members of the media have been kind of pressing to get this footage earlier.
Yes.
What does South Carolina state law, how does that treat police body camera footage? Because I know it's different from North Carolina. We've had several cases where, you know, we've had to go to court to get police body camera video. What does the law say about how police body camera video is treated as public record?
Well, while there's an investigation underway, and there are rules that apply to lawyers and rules that apply to the police under the Freedom of Information Act, I would point out this incident occurred on Wednesday, the 23rd. It's now July the 8th. I think under the Freedom of Information Act, you have 15 days to respond to a Freedom of Information Act request. So we could theoretically be responding today. I again thank SLED because they really moved at light speed. We managed to accomplish all of this, find everybody, interview them, get the videos in, have Dave create this, you know, amalgamated video with multiple layers of audio on it so we could figure out what was going on. Because you really need that depth of understanding. You can't just watch one at a time. You really need to understand what's going on. It takes longer than people think. It's not just like we can sit there and put all this together overnight. Getting it in 15 days, I'm pretty pleased with our speed in getting this back. Yeah.
I have one more question for Chief. That press release came out, and then we saw the video afterwards. There was never a correction sent out because what we seen from the video did not match up from the press release. So essentially, did you guys just put out something just to put out something, or how did that work?
You have to be more specific.
The press release said that Moreno said Travis bumped him and was being malicious. That was the first press release that came out. I assume it's that day or the next day.
Not that day.
The 2 days later, we see surveillance video that contradicts what you guys said. Was there a correction? Are you guys
Contradiction. I don't think there was. What we said is that, again, what happened to Travis was incorrect. But I can't say he was cooperative when the officer came up complying with Moreno. Again, Moreno didn't make the right decision. But again, what happened, we've been very clear about what happened the whole time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate y'all coming out today. These videos will be made available to you. The Chief's releasing them. The videos we shared with you today will be made available to you as well. Sorry about it. Thank you.